Hello, it's Grandma Karen. Today I will show you how to change the needle and how to clean the lint from under the feed dog. Lint and threads under the feed dog can cause bad stitches. In this video, we will be looking at the Bernina Activa 135S. As we learn to change the needle, you will see some machines that are not a Bernina 135, but the information is generic and will apply to your machine. We are working near the needle today. Let's be safe. Turn the machine off or unplug it. To dispose of needles, we do not just throw them in the trash where they can poke someone through the plastic bag. We can wrap them in a paper towel before throwing them away. I've made a little container to dispose of mine. I put duct tape around the lid of this can, and then I make a slit in the top so that I can dispose of my needles this way. And then I store this away from little children so that they can't get into it. Your sewing machine needle is part of what makes great stitches. I change the needle often on my machine. How can you tell if you need to change your needle? The following photos will tell you. The yellow arrow is pointing to a needle with a burr or hook on the pointed end of the needle. This can cause bad stitches, broken threads, and damaged fabric. You will need to change the needle if your needle is like this. Sometimes needles break and have to be replaced. If your needle breaks, try to find all the pieces and properly dispose of them. We will discuss how to prevent breaking needles in our next lesson when we sew on fabric. I often start sewing by feeling the back of the needle. If it has a burr or a hook on it, or if it feels rough like sandpaper, I know it's time to change the needle. If my top thread keeps breaking, or if the tension on my stitches look horrible, or the machine is skipping stitches like the top right photo, I first rethread the machine. If I still have this problem, I put in a new needle. Sometimes a bent, a burred, or a damaged needle can cause these problems. If I hear a crunching or a punching sound as the needle goes into the fabric for each stitch, then I know the point of the needle has become dull and I need to change the needle. Eventually you will be able to hear it when the needle is dull. You need to change the needle about every 6 to 8 hours of sewing. Check the needle often. A new needle makes better stitches. Let's look closely at this huge model of a sewing machine needle. At the top of this needle, where the needle goes into the sewing machine, it's rounded. This is the front of the needle. The front of the needle has a groove that runs down to the hole or the eye of the needle. This is where the thread lies. I turn the needle over, and this is the back of the needle. The back of the needle has a flat side at the top instead of a round side. This photo shows the flat side of the needle and the round side of the needle at the top of the shaft. Here's an important stitch note to help reinforce this. A needle that is bent, dull, rough, or has a burr on the end can cause bad stitches. Change the needle every 6 to 8 hours or when you see or feel or hear problems. To take the needle out of the machine, you will have to turn the needle screw. Your machine's needle screw may look similar to one of these. For most machines, you can just use your fingers to loosen the screw. Some machines have a special screwdriver like these photos to loosen the needle screw and remove the needle. To take out the old needle in this machine, I put the presser foot down. I put the needle in its top position, and then I'm going to hold the needle with my left hand, and I'm going to undo the screw by turning it towards me, turning the top of it towards me, and till the needle comes out. I don't want to unscrew this so much that the screw falls out, and I want to make sure I hold on to the needle so that it doesn't fall into the machine. I'm going to place the old needle on a plate or a bowl, and I'm going to take a new needle out of this package here. For this brand, I need to pull this clear plastic part in the front down, and then this part folds back a little. You don't want to fold it back too much or it'll break. And then I can take out a new needle, and then I'm going to put those back into my plate. And then to put this in, I want the flat side of my needle facing the back of my machine. I'm going to put it in that little hole with my left hand, and I'm going to turn the screw until it's tight. And I'm going to make sure that it's pushed up all the way into the machine. If the needle is not into the hole all the way, your machine will not work. I will make another longer video on needles with a lot more information in a later lesson. Your mentor will choose the correct needle to sew your first quilt. There are still a couple more things you need to know about needles that affect your stitches. The yellow arrow on the left side of the photo is pointing to the needle type, which is called universal. And the bottom right arrow is pointing to the needle size, which is 80/12. These two needles help you understand size. You can see the groove down the front of these two needles. The needle on the left is a size 110. See how thick the shaft is? The eye and groove are also large. The needle on the right is a size 60 needle. The shaft and eye are much smaller. The groove is tiny. Look at the thickness and size of the thread in each needle. This thick thread would have a hard time going into the little size 60 needle. The thickness of the shaft is called the size. The groove on the needle where the thread lies and the eye of the needle get bigger as the size of the needle goes up. Thicker threads need larger size needles. Needle style or needle type is how the point of the needle is shaped. The eye of the needle and the cutout behind the eye are also shaped differently for different types of needles. The style or type may be called stretch needle for sewing stretchy fabrics, or leather needle for sewing leather, or embroidery needle for going really fast in embroidery work. They are shaped to best work with different fabrics, different threads, and with different kinds of sewing. I will use a universal type needle size 80/12. It works well with the thread I'm going to use. The important concept here is when a thread is too big or too small for a needle, it can cause bad stitches and can cause thread to shred. The wrong type of needle for your fabric can also cause bad stitches and bad tension. I showed you how to thread your needle in lesson 8. Your Bernina 135 has a manual or automatic needle threader right here. This needle threader does not work on smaller size 60 or 70 needles. The needle threader should be used gently. It can break easily. The machine is turned off. I have threaded the machine except for the eye. Using the hand wheel, I put the needle in its highest position right there. And then I'm going to push this needle lever down with my left hand. See this little hook right here? I'm going to put my thread under that, and then I'm going to lay it across the top of my needle. And then right here, there's another 2 little hooks. I'm going to put the thread between those. Sometimes on this machine, I have to give it a little push from behind, but do it gently so you don't break anything. Here's a close-up to show you how to push the lever down and how to put the thread under the left hook. After going under the left hook, the thread goes across the eye of the needle and under the hook on the right side of the needle. I'm holding this thread loosely back here, the tail of the thread, kind of up and to the side, and then I'm going to let go of my thread, and I'm also going to let this lever go up. And behind my eye of the needle right here is a little loop that I'm going to pull on and pull that up. I will show you a close-up of that in a minute. And then I'm going to pull on that until the thread tail comes out, and it should be behind the needle. And then before we always start sewing, we find the slit in our presser foot and we put the thread behind the foot like that. And here's a close-up of that little loop that forms behind the needle's eye. Every sewing machine gets lint inside from the thread and from the fabric. You will need to clean it regularly. Many experts advise cleaning the machine every time the bobbin runs out. If you find your stitches are not good, cleaning your machine usually makes them better. Clean the dust off the outside of the machine with a soft cloth. I've removed the needle and the presser foot. I have also removed the top thread. To clean the feed dog area, you will first need to remove the stitch plate. You will need the lint brush and the screwdriver that came with your machine. When your machine comes from the Bernina dealer, you may find that the screws are very tight. Your mentor may need to help you get the screws off. We're going to lower the needle just a little bit, and we're going to use the lint brush and clean off all this part of the needle bar here. Make sure there's no lint there. Then we're going to raise this back up to the highest position. To remove this stitch plate, I need to take out the screws. I've already removed one of the screws right here, and I'm going to remove this one. I've loosened it already, so I'm going to use my screwdriver and finish taking that off. I always put all the little parts I take out of the machine on a plate or in a bowl. Okay, now I'm going to remove the stitch plate. So I just push my finger up in there and you can see how much lint there is in our feed dog area. Some fabrics and threads give off a lot of lint. This needs to be cleaned. Clean the back of the stitch plate first. So I'm just going to take this and clean all the lint off of there. And you might need to wipe it with a soft cloth. Put it back in my bowl. This bobbin area also needs to be exposed for cleaning. Open the bobbin cover and remove the bobbin case. Put that in my plate. I'm going to make sure that the needle bar is all at its highest position, and I'm going to take this race cover and open it up. And how I do that is I push on this little latch right there, push on that, and this will swing down. Here's a close-up of the release button that you need to push to open the race cover. Now you can see the hook. This is the hook right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab a hold of the post in the center and I'm going to pull it straight out. That's the hook. Now I can clean all the lint in this area. So I always start by cleaning the top. And when you're cleaning, you want to always pull all the lint towards you. Don't push back. You don't want it to go down in these holes. So take some lint off, take it off the brush. And then I'm going to clean down here. So now we're going to clean the lint in the hook area. So I'm going to clean this, all the lint out from all those places, and back in the corners, all the lint I can get out. And then this race cover right here also needs to be cleaned off. So I'm going to clean there. And there are two parts to it, so I'm going to kind of clean in between them. And even clean my door cover. There's a lot of lint came off of there. So it's not a good idea to use anything that is metal, like a tweezers or a pin, to clean things out. They can scratch the surfaces and maybe make a rough area where threads could break. Now I pick up the shuttle hook and I'm going to clean it also, get all the lint out of there, all around the sides. And then I'm going to make sure that there's no rough spots on here, especially on these two hooks here and this hook down here. That's what helps make your bobbin thread connect with your top thread. If you find anything that's really rough or a little burr or something, take it into your Bernina dealer and they can help buff it off. Do not use canned air on your machine. You can, however, use a special vacuum or mini vacuum attachment. Many of the mini vacuums are made to clean electronics and keyboards. It is important to take your sewing machine in for tune-ups, just like a car. I take my machine in once a year. The technician can make fine-tuning adjustments that I cannot. Your machine also needs oil. Do not put oil in your machine if it's dirty. Make sure you clean the lint out first. I'm going to put 2 or 3 drops just down here in the bottom of this race area. You don't need to put more than that. My machine begins to make a horrible clanking noise if I have neglected to oil it. Use only sewing machine oil in your machine. Do not use any other kind of oil. If your machine oil is looking old and yellow, then you probably need to buy some new oil. It's recommended that you oil your machine every other time the bobbin runs out. Now it's time to put all the pieces together. I'm going to place a spool of thread, a big spool, underneath the front of my machine here, and that will help tip the machine a little bit. You don't want it tipping back so far that it's going to fall. I'm going to turn my hand wheel to make sure that this half moon shape right here on my machine is on the left side with the top and the bottom pointing up and down like that. Then I'm going to take the shuttle and I'm going to make it so that it is also half of a moon shape on the right side. And I'm going to hold it by this post in the center right there. And I'm going to put it in here and make it connect. And you want to make sure that all this area right here is flush or even with the outside edge. make sure that this is all flat in here, and you're going to take your race cover and you're going to push it pretty hard until you hear it click. My machine is kind of finicky, so I have to really make sure that that's in tight. If you don't get this in tight, then it will fall out when you begin to sew. Okay, now I'm going to remove the spool, and I'm going to put my stitch plate back in place and put the screws in. On this slide you can see that the left side is what I call half of the moon. It stays in the machine. The right side of the moon is called the hook, and that's the part that you've taken out. Here are some photos of the hook outside of the machine. When all the pieces are back in place, then what I do is I take my hand wheel and I rock this back and forth just to make sure that it's in there well. Then I'm going to run the machine without thread for a few seconds to get the oil moving around. I usually put thread on my machine and I sew a few stitches on a scrap of fabric to make sure that no oil will get onto my project. And here's our last stitch note. It says, lint and dust inside your feed dog and bobbin area can cause bad stitches and thread jams. Clean out lint after every bobbin change. Oil the machine after every other bobbin change, and when you hear or feel that it needs it. We have had another lesson with a lot of information. You will eventually be able to hear and feel when your machine needs to be cleaned and oiled. For your homework, show your mentor that you can do the following things. 1. Remove the needle from the sewing machine. Replace the needle with the same needle or with a new one. Properly dispose the old needle. 2. Remove the stitch plate and the bobbin case. Swing open the race cover. Take out the hook. Clean all the lint and thread from these areas and off all the pieces. Oil the machine. 3. Put all the pieces back together correctly. 4. Point out the needle size and the needle type on a package of needles. In our next lesson, we will sew on another practice sheet and sew on some fabric squares. We will learn what a seam is and how to sew using the guidelines on your stitch plate. See you next time. And here's a note to the mentor. In our next lesson, we will use the machine with thread. Print out the worksheet posted underneath the video link for lesson 10, or look at the handout and draw a similar one on paper. You will need the following: 6 squares or rectangles of fabric at least 3 inches by 3 inches, 2 long pieces of fabric at least 12 inches long and at least 2 inches wide. You're going to need pins and small scissors. Thank you for helping someone learn to sew.